What's up? I am Jonathan Bennett, and I am the man of the hour, or I am today's man of the hour. I don't know. I'm a man, and this is an hour, and it's all happening right now.
Today we're catching up with this small-town boy turned Hollywood celebrity, seeing just how one can overcome so many obstacles in such a tough business, and learning how we can all do a little more to be the best versions of ourselves. Jonathan Bennett, we've seen Jonathan Bennett, and now he's right here on the Men of the Hour podcast. You know what? Before we get into anything, I could brag and talk about how many times I've seen you on shows. And, since I started watching American television in grade school, you were one of the first faces I saw because of Mean Girls and because of Cheaper by the Dozen. So before we get into any of that, tell us where you're at and where you're coming to us from, and describe these two things behind you, because I have no idea what the hell they are.
Okay, so this is a moviola, and that head on the wall, that's my ex. That is actually... First of all, Justin, I need you to write my eulogy, because the way you just made me sound so fantastic. Just make sure you send that to my boyfriend when the time comes.
We'll get it to James. Don't worry.
So that is a moose on the wall, and that is a fake moose. It's a stuffed moose. It's from my dad's office. He was a doctor, passed away, and he had that on his head, on his wall in his office, because so many people have real animals on their walls. So he thought it was funny. And this, my friend, is a moviola, which actually works. Back in the day, before there was digital and people had to shoot movies on film, for all the millennials listening, film is a material that you used to put in cameras before you would record them to put them in theaters, all right? Theaters are where we before COVID-19. No, I'm just kidding. So this is a moviola used to edit movies on it. You put the film in here and the sound in here, and then listen to this sound. Does this not just take you back? Listen.
And for those listening on the podcast, Jonathan's kind of walking through this moviola in the back of his office at home, out west in Los Angeles, rather. And I mean, the sound is refreshing. That's what we used to hear back in the 70s and 80s. I mean, I wasn't born, but it's just something that we are not going to talk about how old you are, because for all anybody knows, you're the same age as I, and we're not going to talk about that either.
I really quick want to plug my friend Danny Francese's shirt that I'm wearing, because look at this. It says, the quote from Danny Francese, which I'm so proud of him. I love this shirt. "You either like me or you don't. It took me 20-something years to learn how to love myself. I don't have that kind of time to convince somebody else." Come on. That's good, right?
That's it. 3 sentences is all it took.
Damien and Mean Girls. People don't know.
Yeah. No, I love that. Because it does, you work on yourself for so long, and then essentially you're not asking for forgiveness. You shouldn't ask for forgiveness. You shouldn't ask for approval, right? And you've done none of that, right? Because I think coming from Ohio, the small town that you grew up in, and then coming out to New York City immediately after school, which we'll get into in just a second. But we know Jonathan Bennett from Mean Girls, right? You just plugged it, Cheaper by the Dozen, Van Wilder, and so many other films. And then you went straight into TV hosting. But essentially, you've hosted programs on Food Network, or shows, and then you went on to host New Year's Eve with my buddy Jeremy Hassel, right? You've done that quite a few times. I think you've encompassed what it really means to take a TV personality and extend it across a wide portfolio. But when you're looking back at, Jonathan, who grew up in Rossford, Ohio, that dreamed about what the career could have possibly looked like, and then it all ended up being like this. Is this what you were expecting, or did it kind of just come along as it went? Or, tell us about that.
No, this is not what I thought it would look like. At all. Not at all. I thought I was going to just be an actor that did movies and TV shows, because that's what every one of my reps back in the day were pushing me to be, right? That's because I looked a certain way, and I had a certain thing, and I did Mean Girls, and I had this thing, and it worked. And, that's what I was pushed to do. But, it really wasn't until I did Dancing with the Stars where I just something came alive in me where I go, oh, this is what I'm also supposed to be doing, right? Because I was on the show, and I don't know if you know, but Tom Bergeron is the best of the best in the business as far as host. Like, no one's better. And I would go to work every day and do my dancing with my partner, and I was very bad at dancing, like very, very bad at dancing. But what I loved is making people laugh in between the dances on the live show. And then I also loved watching Tom Bergeron work. I was like, that's what I want to do. Like, what he's doing, that's where I belong. It's not here, right? And so that was kind of like a moment where I was like, okay, this is an aha moment. This is me going, oh, this is where it all connects. I'm going to go up and be me. Because for so many years, you know, I was, you know, not publicly fully out. I was out to my friends and stuff, but I wasn't myself. I was this like version of what I thought Hollywood wanted me to be, right? This is what you're supposed to be. You look a certain way, you're in this box, go be in that box. But I'm not in that box. That's not who I am. And I couldn't live anymore just like being this person that was just, I was still me. I was just like 10% of what the whole package of Jonathan Bennett is, right? I was just giving a sliver of what I actually was. And so once I did Dancing with the Stars, I kind of was like, okay, I'm just going to show the whole package and see if it works. And it did. And that's when I got Food Network and started hosting. I realized I was really funny at hosting, especially kids love my energy, my enthusiasm, my craziness. And so I started just leaning into it. And the more I leaned into it, the more jobs you get. The more jobs you get, the more you work, and you realize, oh, this works. So it's a completely different trajectory. I mean, then I did what? Celebrity Big Brother? Who does that? That's the most bizarre thing in the world. But I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. I should go do that. And, you know, that opened other doors. And so, yeah, I think it's a different trajectory from where I thought I'd be, but it's also so much more fun doing what I do. And I love it so much more. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Actually, it's funny you say about Jeremy Haskell at New Year's Eve. So I was on TRL VJ for a day.
You were.
Which would like old school TV show with Ray Munns, and you would go on and try to be a VJ. And it was at 1515 Broadway at MTV. And I did the show. It was my first time on television ever. And I hosted it and, you know, did my thing, read my teleprompter. And then this amazing thing happened where I was hosting New Year's Eve in Times Square last year. And I am in the middle of Times Square on a stage surrounded by 2 million people and 1.6 billion, that's with a B, people are watching live streaming for 6 hours. And I get to go, Happy New Year, Times Square. And the whole square erupts. And I'm, you know, controlling the square and hosting to them and streaming everyone at home. And I look up and I was like, 20 years ago, I was in that building and I was on TV for my first time. And that's the first time I was like, ooh, I like being on TV. I like hosting. And then I got pushed into the acting box. And now here I am hosting and acting and doing it all. And I know there's really no bigger thing than Times Square New Year's Eve as a host. Like if you're a host, that's the Super Bowl. Like you don't get a bigger job than hosting New Year's Eve on Times Square. It doesn't exist. And so to get to be there and to see where I came from was really a magical moment. So
yeah. And I think
I just rambled for about 20 minutes.
That's what we wanted you on the podcast for. What, 20 minutes and 50 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, right? I mean, we would love to keep you on for 2 hours, but you know, I love that you allude to the fact that it was quite a bit magical because there's some serendipity behind that, don't you think? There's something to be said about people who chase something larger than themselves with a big passion and purpose like you do, which is to, you know, you take your enthusiasm and entertain people with your energy. And you do that. You do it so well. It's why I've looked at you as a role model as well. You're great. Right. And that's exactly why we're so happy to have you on this podcast now. But when you think, Jonathan, back to some of those TRL days even and some of those early days in your career, you know, I want to pose this question to you and hopefully instill some inspiration into the younger audiences listening and watching right now. But, you know, when you think about the younger Jonathan that wanted to kind of switch gears from acting to hosting on your hardest days, the no's, you know, the ups and the downs and the downward spirals, what kind of kept you motivated through it all? And then ultimately why?
the hardest part was having the motivation to keep going when I was starting out in the business. That's the tricky part, right? Because when we start getting success, it's a different type of struggle, right?
Yeah.
But trying to make it and get your own break. If I were to condense everything I learned in the 20 years from coming out and just leaning into who I am, I'm not the cool hot guy that's just like brooding in a corner smoking weed in the show. I am a giant 5-year-old who is full of energy, full of life, and loves making people laugh, and is completely okay with looking stupid. I don't want to look cool. I think it's more fun to look silly and make people laugh at it because it gives me such a rush for who I am. But when you look back at that and you look back at starting in the business, if I were to condense what I learned and would have done something sooner, I would have been myself sooner. And I think we all have for young kids listening, we have these the predispositions of what we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to act and how we're, what kind of career we're supposed to chase. And if we're, being an actor is the hardest job in the world. It really is. And it has more rejection. There's more mental anguish than anyone can ever possibly imagine. Think of going in for a job interview and you have to go into a job interview to work in sales or something. Well, if you go into a job interview and you have to do that over 100 times a year, and every single time you walk in, they're like, we like you, but we're going to go with Bob instead. You have to have some sort of something inside you that makes you scrape what dignity you have left off the bottom of Hollywood's shoe and slap it on your face and walk back in the next day for the next one. And the only way you do that is because the only way you're able to do that is because you're passionate about what you're doing, right? Since the time I was 2 years old, I wanted to be an actor. There's never been another job, nothing. Never thought of anything, never wanted to do anything. It was a one set track focused mind, and that's it. So you have to know what you want and you have to go for it 1000%, but also you have to be yourself while doing it. You have to be authentic, because the more authentic you are, the more connections and bonds and relationships you make with people, and the more people see you. They see who you are. And when they see who you are, they become connected with you. And that's when your life changes and things happen, right? So I always tell kids that are listening, it's my favorite saying. My boyfriend's probably downstairs listening right now, making fun of me because I say it too much, but I'll never stop saying it. The two things I learned that I would take away is that 3 things. You have to be your authentic self. Hands down, you have to be you. Number 2, get out of your own way. Get out of your own way. 90% of the reason people don't succeed is because they're in their own way, right? And what that means is the person that is a, let's say, waiter at a burger restaurant, which is a great job, versus someone that is a CEO. The CEO doesn't have better ideas or more connections with things. I mean, they can, but 9 times out of 10, the CEO is the person that activated. And I learned that from Melissa Carbone, who owned 1031 Productions, does all these crazy big shows. She's like, it's all about activation. Like, get out of your own way. The reason you're not, like, there's no reason that you aren't the CEO. There's no reason you don't have 10 shows. The people doing it aren't better than you. They're not smarter than you. They just activate it differently. And it's all about that activation, right? So think about the activation. And then the third thing is, in this whole process, remember that you're never too much and you're always enough. So think about what that means. You're never too much. That means if you break down the words, you're never too much. You are never, at no time, at no point ever, are you too much. No matter what you're feeling, what you're doing, what you're going through that day, you are never too much. If you're being obnoxious, if you're being crazy, because where you are in your life and where that moment that you're having has, where you've come to this moment, you've dealt with a whole life before this to get to this moment. So whatever you're feeling and happening, it's okay. You can feel that way. You can do this. You're never too much, and you're always enough. Meaning at all times and on all occasions, you are enough, right? You don't have to be anything more or anything less than just who you are. You don't, and I did that for years, 10 years, starting the acting business, the business of show. I thought I had to be something else, and I don't. And if I would have learned that earlier, I probably would have saved myself a lot of pain and stress and anguish, right? So just remember, you are never too much and you're always enough. Get out of your own way and follow me on Instagram. I'm just kidding.
I think we can end the podcast. I
All
think
right.
your episode's no. Hey, don't you exit out of this call now, Jonathan. You know, I love that you allude to the fact that there's, I mean, out of those three, which are all very important, I madly respect you for saying that you have to get out of your own way. I think a lot of people are in their head majority of the time. And even as young people, as people who are in this business, 2 years, 10 years, 50 years, it comes down to acting on your impulses. Is something I actually took an acting class in college at the University of Tennessee, go Vols. But we, you know, Tennessee Vol, right? We'll tell you. Double N-E, double S, double E, right? We got to take you to a Vols game soon. But
so many, they're amazing.
Right? Vol Nation, dude. We have some of the best fans. But I think something that I was thinking about when you said that is the fact that, you know, we tend to get in our own way, but ultimately never act on our impulses. And the reason I bring up that acting teacher, Katie Cunningham, because she always used to say, why are you feeling what you're feeling? And she's like, I don't care what you're feeling. Why don't you act on it? It's the same reason people would go to therapy. It's the same reason people, you know, impulsively act on certain things. You could throw a dish at the wall for being mad, or you can hug a puppy because you want to cry. And I think either way you look at it, it always comes down to the fact that, like, you acted on your impulses, and regardless, that emotion got out. And it should go the same for acting on your interests too, which is exactly what you've been doing. You wanted to host a TV show after, you know, seeing other people do it. And it's like, well, you know what? Dance with the Stars changed my perspective. Let me go down both avenues and look where you ended up.
Yeah, and you just have to do all of it. Yeah, because I mean, here's the thing too. Why are we so afraid to succeed? People say that they're afraid to fail. I call bullshit. They're afraid to succeed.
Pardon the interruption, my friends. I know he's saying a lot of great things, but I want you to know that the episode you're watching is proudly presented by Manscaped, who's the best in men's below-the-waist grooming, and we all know that in order to be the best version of yourself, you gotta be sure you're well-groomed all around. Manscaped has spent 18 months perfecting this new ball hair trimmer 3.0, and I want you guys to try it for yourself because, to be honest with you, I love it. Be sure to head to manscaped.com and use the code MOTH20 for 20% off and free shipping. That's MOTH20 at manscaped.com. Your balls and your partner will thank you later. Let's get back to the episode, my friends. Yeah.
Because success, I have a friend that just got a bunch of success, and he's like, this is way harder and way different than I thought it would be. I was like, right, it's pretty lonely on top of the mountain, isn't it? And that's something I had to learn. Like you think it's just, we get so afraid to succeed because when we get afraid to succeed, we're afraid to succeed because we're like, well, what if then we lose it? Or what if then it's not good enough? And that keeps us from succeeding in the first place, right? But that's the thing, you're never gonna arrive. There's no, people that are listening, kids, young people, you know, whatever age you are, however old you are, whoever's listening to this, like, there's no such thing as arriving. It's never going to happen. You need to realize that. You will never arrive. You will never be where you want to be. It will never happen. When you accept that and know that wherever you arrive at is just a platform for you to have a goal for your next thing that you want to do. Because, like, once you have one TV show, you want two. I've been there. Once I have 2 TV shows, I'm like, 2 is not enough. I want 4. What did I have? 6 shows on Food Network at once. What did I want? I wanted to host Kelly and Ryan. I was like, I think I should be.
Yeah.
And my agents are like, you can't do it. Like, there's nothing else. Like, they're like, we have nothing else for you. I'm like, I should be hosting that. Like, you go for it because no matter how much success you get, and you think, oh, when I get this, I will have arrived. When I get this, I will have arrived. But that's a false dream. It never happens. I'm not saying you can't achieve your goals. You can achieve your goals. But once you get there, you're not going to have the feeling you think you're going to have where you're like, I'm set, I'm good, I've done it. Because it will never happen because you will have tasted the apple of success and you will only want more. So stop thinking that, oh, well, once I get this, then I'll blank. Well, once I do this, then I'll blank. Well, once I have that achieved, I'll be set. Never going to happen. World moves too fast. It's 2020 and it's a different world because there will always be someone younger, smarter, faster, hotter, whatever coming up on your right behind you. It will always happen. So there's never a moment where you're going to just arrive and feel okay, but you have to learn where the internal happiness in the moments are, right? You have to learn where on the journey those moments can be accomplished feelings, good feelings of like, oh wow, I checked that off my bucket list. I did it. Great. Hosting Times Square? Great, I did it. But guess what? I hosted the webcast. What do I want now? Seacrest job. Like, obviously, everyone wants Seacrest job. It's best. It's so good. But, you're sitting there, and I'm like, he has a space heater, and I don't.
He has a big umbrella, and I only have a small one, right?
Okay, I want that job next. So it's that false illusion that that we're going to make it. There's no such thing as making it. There's just experiences and a journey, right? It's not it's always going to be a journey. It's always going to be a journey. And you're always going to be on that journey until the day you die. And that's okay. And it's not to say we can't celebrate great moments. We can. But like, don't think, I just want anyone to have false hope in the back of the head. They're like, once I do this, I will have made it. It doesn't exist. What now? Once you have this taste of this podcast, what do you want now? You're like, well, I want to turn this into a TV show. Have you not said that to someone?
We already talked about it with the team.
But the Justin Crawford that is 3 years ago wanted a podcast.
Yeah.
Right? Now we have the podcast, and we thought 3 years ago, well, once I have a podcast, it'll be good. You got it, and it's great, but we're not happy. We always want that next thing.
Yeah, I think that goes straight to the point of people are
nodding their head. Your producers. Go on.
Straight to the point that a lot of people probably misunderstand sometimes, which is.
Sorry.
Say it again.
He's like, I'm making.
Jonathan, some people misunderstand this quote, and it is, we always want what we don't have. So when you're thinking about, everything you just said, I think makes complete sense to us, but there's a sense of confidence I think a lot of people might need in order to get that next step in what they want. For instance, podcast to show, actor to TV host like yourself. Right. So, and we know you ultimately to be this TV host and actor as this ball of energy and enthusiasm and excitement, right? And you alluded to that, your 5-year-old self that we see on social media, your extravagant personality we see on Cake Wars. But when you're thinking of the confidence back behind all of that, I think that is a very important topic people have yet to understand. And I obviously want to gear this question towards anybody who's interested in learning just how you can really instill confidence in yourself and truly believe in the career that you're going down. What would you tell those people who are struggling with such a thing?
Well, can I cuss on here or no?
Cuss as much as you want, dude.
I taught spin. I was a spin instructor for charity. When my parents passed away, I got really into group fitness and spinning to like mentally keep me sane. And I loved the rush of a spin. But then, of course, what happened? I was taking 100 spin classes a week, and I would see the person with the microphone, and I go, I want to do that. I can do that better because spinning was enough. Now I have to teach it. So I got certified, and I would teach rides for charity. Right? I wasn't like a regular spin instructor. I was a cool spin instructor. No, I would teach rides for charity to raise money for different benefits. And there's something I would always say in the class, and that is, there are people in this life that are going to tell you you're not good enough. There are people that are going to tell you you're not smart enough. There are rooms you're going to walk in that are going to tell you no. There are people that are going to tell you that you're not going to make it. And there are people that are going to just close doors on you all the time. Fuck them. That is my favorite thing to say in a spin class, because fuck them, guys. They suck. Like, it doesn't matter. like, go for everything. What's the worst that can happen? Like, I would always say, when I go up for an audition, there was like a network that I was trying to work on for a long time, and I would never get hired on it. And so I started just doing stuff in the auditions to just try stuff. I was like, well, should I go in and just do this? Like, should I wear this crazy shirt and just like go in and be this crazy person that could work for the show. And I'm like, I don't know. And then I would say to my agent, they'd be like, I don't know if it's a good idea. And I go, what are they going to do? Hire me less? Like, they're already not hiring me. Why not just go for it? What are they going to do? Fire me? I don't even have the job. Like, screw you. I'm going to do what I want. And the moment you just have that attitude of confidence of just, screw you guys, I'm going to do what I think is fun and what I want to do. When you start doing that, all the people that said no, or all the people that you were afraid of, all of a sudden go, huh, wait, what's he doing? What's that? I like that. Come here. Like, once you start just saying, screw it, and I'm just going to do what I want to do, and what's the worst that's going to happen? They're not going to hire you? Okay, well, they won't hire you. Or, oh, you're going to go for this job, or you're going to try to write a book. I wrote a cookbook that became a bestseller.
A burn cookbook, yep.
A Mean Girls inspired cookbook. You
have it around? No?
I never wrote a book before. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea. I'd never done it. They're like, do you know how to write a book? I go, absolutely not. Do you know how to cook? I'm like, yeah, I'm a pretty good cook. I know what I'm doing. I'm on Food Network a lot. I'll call one of the chefs, get them to help me, make sure I'm doing it perfect. Called the chef. Hey, can you help me do this? Nikki Martin. She goes, yeah, totally. Just make sure all my recipes are like on point, right? Like, I want to make sure I'm not screwing this up because I think this is right. Doubling check. Yeah, it looks great. Looks fantastic. I don't know how to release a book. I don't know how to write a book. Like, what do you write forward? I don't know. But I did it, and guess what? Bestseller. Like, just do it. It doesn't matter. You're just all going to die one day. Who cares? Like at the end of the day, nothing matters when that hearse is driving down the street. Like, who cares? Just do it. If you fail, you fail. You do. Oh, I did Dancing with the Stars. Got voted off 3rd. I came in 9th place, and Tommy Chong beat me. He's 81. I failed at dancing in front of 25 million people on national television. An 81-year, I don't know how old he is. He's something, 70 something. I don't know. Tommy Chong's older. He beat me. I was like 30 when it happened. So I failed at dancing publicly in front of millions of people. But guess what? That got me Food Network. Hey, guess what? I went on Celebrity Big Brother. Thought I was going to win. I got voted out first. Guess what I realized? I'm not good at competition shows where I have to have strategy and, screw with each other's minds. It's not my thing. But guess what? I publicly learned that in front of 18 million people live. So, what's the worst that can happen? They vote you out? All right, they voted me out. Guess what? I got my paycheck and I went home and watched them on TV. Like, it just doesn't matter. We're just going to all die one day. Just do whatever you want. Like, figure it out. The book is by Melissa Carbone. She was on Shark Tank. She created the haunted house. The book she wrote is Ready, Fire, Aim. How I Turned a Hobby into an Empire. Now she's a multi-millionaire with, is now a shark on Shark Tank. The first person to start as a fish and come back as a shark because she did it. Ready, fire, aim. Now think about that. What do people normally say? Ready, aim, fire.
Aim, fire.
Right? So she says ready, fire, aim. It's all about activation. Like, you have to activate on so many things and try so many different things before one of them click and sticks. And then whatever's clicking and sticking, you take that and you run with it. But if people that sit around and wait to have all their ducks in a row to activate something, you're never going to have your ducks in a row. It's never going to happen. Just do it and then figure it out as you go later. Like, that's how you have to go into the activation mentality.
Couldn't have said it better myself, my friend. The last standing question for you. It's one I love to leave with people because the answer certainly is something I know listeners and viewers will appreciate. But what is one thing you know today that you wish you knew on the first day you landed your first big acting gig?
Ooh, my first big acting gig. I would say it was when I was my first big acting gig was All My Children, the soap opera.
Yep.
And I wish someone would have come up to me and said, you can just be you. You don't have to hide everything about you.
Goes back to the 10% that you showed off at the top of your career that you are now giving us the full Jonathan Bennett. And I fully appreciate you. I know everybody listening and watching fully appreciates you, or else they wouldn't be sitting and listening and watching this podcast. You know, there's something special about Jonathan Bennett. And I certainly know that if I saw it as a young Japanese American who started watching American TV in grade school, a lot of people saw it in you, and you certainly have made a name for yourself and a mark in this industry. So, you know, I appreciate you for stopping by on the podcast, virtually even. I mean, we're still in those times. 2020 was a hell of a year for all of us. And I think, you know, before we wrap quickly, we got a couple minutes here, but I want to talk about the fact that you actually, back in May 2020, were part of one of the first, if not the first, you know, shows to go back into production.
So I was in, because that's again, right? Like, you just have to go for everything. You just have to attack it and go for everything.
Even if, let me stop you here. Even if you started Quarantine Coffee and we're wiping every little thing down with James right as this thing starts.
Here's the thing. We did a YouTube show called Quarantine Coffee for like 3 weeks. And then we were like, we can't do this anymore because I'm exhausted. Making a 15-minute YouTube talk show a day takes 9 to 12 hours a day. We're like, we don't sleep. All we do is make this show.
Quarantine Coffee.
And what did I learn? I learned that I don't really like making coffee shows in my living room on Skype. It's just not for me.
Yep.
But I did a movie called Harvest of the Heart. And it is the first SAG film to shoot since COVID. I was the #1 SAG film shot, the first. So we were basically the guinea pigs, and it turned out great. Everyone was safe. It proved that you can shoot a movie during quarantine and during COVID, and it can be done safely, and you can have a great experience. Everyone on it was fantastic, and it's, you know, it's a different world, but it's doable.
Yeah. And I think no one would think it would be doable unless you all went out and actually did the damn thing. You know, obviously safety measures were in place.
Like, when your agent calls, do you want to go and shoot the first movie? Yeah, absolutely. I do. Sure. Let's go.
Take a chance on it.
Okay. Like, just go for it. Just, yeah. What's the worst that can happen? We get there and they realize it's not going to work and we all have to come home. Okay, fine. But let's go do it.
Jonathan, if I didn't know enough about your life already, we do now. Thank you for stopping by the podcast. You know, you are the man of the hour, like you said at the top of the show, and I'm so thankful you stopped by. I think it's interesting. We get such an incredible insight into guests like you when you guys come on and share, you know, your honest and candid thoughts on these questions we pose to you, hopefully to inspire younger men growing up in the generation and time we're living in, to ultimately get future generations thinking about the best life they can live for themselves, not doing the 10%, it wasn't a bad thing at the top of your career, right? But then openly being your authentic self throughout your entirety of whatever it is you're pursuing. And then anybody else listening to this, I think there's a lot of silver lining to be done, even alluding to the movie that you had shot. You know, there's always going to be some way and somehow to do things as long as you activate, like you had said. So thank you again for stopping by the Men of the Hour podcast.
Thank you. Remember, you're never too much and you're always enough.
Justin Crawford here, and I'll be back next week with another great guest on the Men of the Hour podcast. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review right here and anywhere else you'd like to listen. Also, check out our Instagram and YouTube channels when you get a chance and see the full video interviews with our guests at Men of the Hour podcast. Thanks for listening. Now get out there and make a positive change for yourself and those around you.